Forest City, what's going on? Carrington Gaines here, and I am sitting with none other than one of my favorite people in the entire world, and he just happens to be our lead pastor too. Steve Carter, man, what's going on?
Man, it's so good to be with you, my friend. The love is mutual.
Yeah, man, it's good, it's good. So if you guys don't know yet, Steve has this brilliant way of unpacking things underneath things, okay? Like getting to the root of issues, not allowing things to remain surface. Like a couple years ago, he released a book called The Thing Beneath the Thing. And like, I love the book. I think as a church, we all read the book and we went and we did some dates together, and like, I got to hear you speak on it, and we got to sing some songs, and it was amazing time. But now you're releasing a new book and it's coming out in May. And I'm like, oh man, hearing the few like snippets from that new book, and I'm like, oh man, how did you get from The Thing Beneath the Thing to Grieve, Breathe, Receive? This feels like almost like a part two in a way.
It really is. They are sister books. I mean, they are related. In 2018, when so much of what I thought life was going to be just came crashing down,
Yep.
I went to the desert with my family, and there were two primary questions. The first question was, why do we do what we do? Which led to The Thing Beneath the Thing. But the second question is, what do you do when life does what it does?
Bro.
When it shocks you, when it surprises you. And you know, you and I, we've walked through some difficult experiences with a loss in your family or unexpected. And it's like, what do we do? And I think for many of us, and I'll speak just for myself, I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know how to sit with that. I just knew how to achieve and hustle. And that's often what I would do to try and not have to deal with the sadness and the stuff. And so those few years in the desert were an invitation to experience God's kindness, God's goodness, even when life does what it often does.
Bro, I love that line. I saw the trailer and I was like, when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's a line. And it's so simple, but it's so powerful. It's impactful. I can't wait to read the book. So with Grieve, Breathe, Receive, you actually talked about how it's kind of like this Friday, Saturday, Sunday piece. And can you like just unpack that piece a little bit? Because I was like, when you said it Sunday, I think I was like, oh, I didn't think of this in that way. Like, so can you just unpack that for the folks just a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Well, when I heard Alive in You for the first time, it really felt like the anthem that was so connected to my heartbeat for Grieve, Breathe, Receive. And here's why. I need a framework. Because if I have a healthy framework, it makes my life work. And the truth is, I had that question, what do we do when life does what it often does? I didn't have an answer. And I just found myself going to the Gospels and just trying to read. I started reading through Romans, started reading through some of Paul's and John's words and Peter's words. And I just kept coming back to Holy Weekend, Good Friday. Nobody saw a Messiah who was perfect. He didn't deserve to die. It was unfair. It was unjust. It wasn't right. And I think for many people who experience a sense of grief, or betrayal, or abandonment, or loss, you can look and feel some of those same feelings. It's not right. It's not okay. And that's what Friday has to teach us. But then think about it through the lens of the disciples. Their rabbi's dead. It's Saturday. They find themselves just in the Hebrew scriptures version, like Egypt, the desert, the promised land. They're in this Saturday desert experience. They don't know that resurrection's coming. They're in the sense of, what are we doing? Are we going to get arrested? Are we going to die? Are we like, what's going to happen to us? Exactly. And I think for many of us, when we start to lean into our desert or our silent Saturday, as you know, the biblical scholars have referred to that day, when we're in that liminal space, sometimes we're feeling something. We're like, I just got to get through this, or I just got to hustle. And it really is an invitation to, how do we choose to wait? And for many of us, we hate the wait. For many of us, we waste the wait, and we just go to unhealthy patterns.
The wait is crazy.
It is, you know, and what that does is it slows down the journey to Sunday. If you think about it from the Hebrew perspective, like when they left Egypt, They were about a month away from the promised land, but it took them almost 500 months, and they just wandered. And I think oftentimes many of us wander in our grief and in our sadness because of we don't necessarily know how to bring that before God and actually see Holy Weekend as a path in the grief journey. So we just choose to escape, and it slows us down from Sunday. And the truth of the gospel is that Sunday is coming.
Sunday is coming.
And when Sunday happened, it was a full-on surprise. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody expected it. And I think what I discovered in the desert was God is a God of surprise. That when he shows up on Sunday, he's going to show up in a kind and good and healing and refreshing way. I just have to do my work so that I'm ready to receive all that God wants to give to me. And that's the Holy Weekend invitation to really go on a different kind of grief journey that actually walks the steps that Jesus walked.
Bro, for one, this is not planned, and this man just like Steph Curry that thing just real quick. Bro, that was wasting the weight. Man, if we had more time, I would love to just dig into that. We'll just have to do that at a different time because we going to try to keep it short because last time we did a podcast, it ended up being like 50 minutes. Okay. All right, Carter, what you just unpacked there, and when I'm looking at the Grieve, Breathe, Receive concept, I'm like, man, bro, I think it's such a timely book. I think it's a timely work because if you look in, 2024 with all the people that are going through all types of things, not just in church, people are going through trauma in so many different ways. And if you look on social media, you see how people, not to make light of anything, but how they bond over trauma or they make these altars or idols out of the trauma that they went through. But what you do so well, from the thing beneath the thing to now this new piece of work, you unpack dealing with trauma in such a healthy way. So even if you're a Christian and you're walking in the faith, or even if you're not, you unpack it in such a practical way for someone to be like, oh, wait, so this is not my only response. I don't just have to waste away or waddle in the stuff. I can actually have a healthy way of dealing with it, understanding what happened, but understanding that Sunday is coming and that there is another path for me. How with this book, what are you expecting to happen with this book to help people hey, deal with this thing in a healthy way and not put it on a pedestal of hey, this is just what I went through and just glorifying it. But it's no, receive it, understand that was a thing, embrace that, but don't stay there. Cause that's what I feel like you do. You hey, you get us to not have to hey, don't stay there. There's a forward for you. So
It's interesting. I, a number of years ago was in, Israel, and I saw a rabbi, and you know me, I'm just going to go chop with anyone. And so I walked up to this rabbi and I said, hey, can I ask you a couple questions? And I said, in the Hebrew scriptures, Egypt is a space, the desert is a space, and the promised land is a space that has significant meaning. This is a random question, but how much time do you think people spend in each place? Yeah. And he looks at me and goes, you Americans are so funny. You think everything is up and to the right. You think everything's the promised land. Not so with us. We think 10 to 15% of your life will be in Egypt, 10 to 15% of your life will be in the promised land, and the remaining 70 to 80% is in the desert. And I just remember when he said it, I didn't understand it, because this was 2014. And then when 2018 happened, and I'm trying to pick up the pieces, I realized every one of us has probably a lean towards Friday or Saturday or Sunday. We all have the temptation to be people only of Sunday. I just can't wait for it to receive and just be all about the good, but not actually deal with the pain and the darkness and the sadness of Friday. And some of us, we can grieve and we can build those altars, but we don't grieve, like it says in 1 Thessalonians 4, with hope. And so what I really want is to help people recognize there's a full spectrum, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to actually hold. Because if you don't actually grieve well, that unprocessed grief will become grievances. And when those grievances build, they're just proof that there's unforgiveness in our heart. And I actually think the greatest gift that Christ gives to us is grace and the gift to forgive. You think of John 20, when Jesus returns, like you have all the disciples there. They're worried. They don't know if they're going to be arrested. They don't know what's to come. And Jesus shows up and he just says, peace be with you. He breathes on them, receive the Holy Spirit. And then he says the most common sense line. He goes, if you forgive, they're forgiven. And if you don't, they're not. He's like, you either are going to partner in my mission, and that is to practice letting go of the grievances, to actually forgive, to set your heart, your soul, your mind, your body to welcome the goodness of Sunday and all that Sunday has to offer. And so I think for any one of you, just ask yourself, which day do you try to bypass the most? And which day are you living in? What would it look like to have more of a biblical framework to say, I can feel and experience Friday. I understand what the desert of Saturday and the silence of Saturday does within me. And I'm also going to hold on to the hope, no matter if it's a day, a week, a month, a year, a season. I'm going to hold on to the hope because I know Christ got me. And as Romans 8:28 says, God is working for the good of all of those, all of us. So,
Man, come on, Carter. Listen, man, if you haven't already pre-ordered, or depending on when you're watching this, if you haven't already like downloaded it or got it off of Audible or Amazon or wherever you get your books or audio books, please today do whatever you need to do to get this book, because I believe that no matter where you are in life, if you're not grieving now, if you're not going through something right now, eventually you will. And this book will be like a perfect tool to help us get through anything that we're going through. Man, thank you so much for just a few minutes. We love you at Forest City Church. You're our pastor, you're our leader, and we are so proud of everything that you're doing. Hey, we love y'all. Peace.